Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to my 100 subscribers special, the promised Q&A video. First of all, thank you so much for this support throughout the last 3 years now. It really does mean a lot to me, and so thanks for that, and thank you for making it possible to reach 100 subscribers. I hope it won't stop there. You could trust me, I would stop making videos, so there's that. I've been asking you guys to post some questions, and I made a list with all these questions, and it's not in alphabetical order or chronological order, but I have considered all your questions and I'm gonna answer them. So here we go. Joseph 2000 would like to know, what made you start playing War Thunder? Short answer, a friend did, a very close friend till today, and we had been playing multiplayer games together. And one day he told me about this kind of new free-to-play title where you could fly planes and drive tanks. So I thought to myself, that sounds pretty interesting, simply because I had been playing a lot of old school MS-DOS games, especially simulator games in my childhood, which featured a variety of all those iconic World War II fighter planes. So this interest made me play War Thunder, and also my friend's recommendation, so thanks a lot. Okay, so next question. Sexy Bastard would like to know, how long have you been playing War Thunder? I've been playing the game since 2014, I guess, and my Steam account lists around 2.5k hours of total playtime. So you might say, well, that's quite a lot, but yeah, to be honest, it's about 8 years now, 100 days of total playtime. Yeah, I think you get the idea that I'm not that kind of hardcore War Thunder player. I usually play the game for a few days and then I take a break because I get annoyed or I simply want to play something different, and yeah, that's why I didn't accumulate thousands of hours or 10,000s of play hours throughout the last 8 years. Bethel Scrubs would like to know, what country are you from? And what was the first country you started playing? Okay, so I'm from Germany. I think you can tell by my accent sometimes. Or sometimes because I kind of get lost in translation and I don't know what to say. Ja, und schön, dass ihr alle da seid und willkommen auf meinem Kanal. Und außerdem gibt es hier noch eine zünftige Brotzeit gleich. Und ich habe die Lederhosen an und ich trinke mein Weißbier. No, it's all a lie. I don't drink Weißbier. Kidding. Sorry. Okay, just to get serious again, I started playing with the Germans and also the Americans. Yeah, and the reason why I chose the Germans is actually quite simple, because at the time I started playing, the game was in a very different state, so to speak. You had only 5 nations, you had a very different matchmaker, and yeah, German teams were always very powerful because they had one of the best climbing fighter planes in the game. So it was very natural to take the Germans out because you would always climb above everyone else, especially at low tier. And in addition to that, the matchmaker was also very different because most of the time you would fight with the Germans against USA or Great Britain, for example. So whenever you took out the Germans, you could be sure that it would be an instant win. And whenever you sought out a real challenge, you would fly with the Americans. Yeah, but seriously, thinking back, I can totally understand all those players that always entered rage mode when they had to fight against the Germans, because they were considered OP and they totally were OP at that time. If you compare it to the present I mean, this is not the case anymore, because whenever I have to fight against the Germans, I see them just ground pounding like anyone else. So I think, and there's a lot of reasons for it, but the main reason might be that Gaijin has changed the matchmaker and introduced more nations. And if you ask me, I'd say that's a good thing, because it made me try out new nations, different playstyles, different planes, which would not always suit your favorite playstyle. So all in all, just broaden your horizon of understanding the game. And I would definitely recommend that you would do the same. Okay, so next question. Logan Fralisco would like to know, what is your favorite prop plane and why? Well, that's simple, this one. The US Marine Corps version of the FOU Corsair 1A. And the reason behind it goes back to my childhood. In the 90s, my brother and I were watching a TV series, and it had a very funny name in Germany. It was called Pazifikgeschwader 214, which would translate to Pacific Squad 214. But its actual name was Marine Fighter Squadron 214, or VMF-214, also known as the Black Sheep, which was actually the alternative title to the German show. It was called Die Schwarzen Schafe. Another reason why this is my favorite prop plane is that I played a simulator game called Aces of the Pacific, and it mostly depicted the Pacific War between 1941 up to 1945, and you could fly all these iconic fighter planes for the Americans, but also for the Japanese. One part of the game was that you could fly a campaign for the US Marine Corps, which meant that sooner or later you could also join the Black Sheep Squad. So yeah, in combination with watching the TV show and also playing the actual fighter plane that was depicted in this show, it made a huge impression on me. Besides the fact that this plane performs pretty well in War Thunder. So that's the reason why this Corsair is my favorite plane. Fandango Mobile has two questions. First one is, when do you zoom for aiming? And the second one, what did you do to practice, improve your aim in the past? So if I understand you correctly, you would like to know when I zoom in and when I don't zoom in. So to answer that, I used to zoom in a lot, especially when I got close to the target, which turns out to be a mistake, because the closer you get and you zoom in, the larger, the more space your target occupies on your screen. And then you cannot see actually where your bullets are going, which means it could throw off your aim massively. And sometimes I'm still zooming in when I'm close. But I would consider it a bad habit and not very helpful. So what I'm doing instead is I actually zoom in on the target when I'm 2Ks away or 3K. And the reason being is to get a better impression on energy states or angle of approaches and stuff. Has the guy actually seen me? Has he noticed me? Or even when I pull up people in the vertical, I like to check with a zoom on the target if you can see, for example, those contrails on the wings, which would indicate the guy stalling. Yeah, I think that's when I zoom in most of the time. So I hope that answers your question. And for your next question, what I actually do or did in the past to practice improve my aim is the most common thing that would always improve your aim, and that would be playing the game, for example. But there is actually a lot of stuff or techniques you could try out, or I tried out to practice and improve my aim, and some of them worked out and some of them didn't. So what really works out for me is not to zoom in too much, or for example use tracer belts for armaments I haven't tried out before. So you can get a better impression on how the bullets actually drop, what's the velocity of the bullets, what might be the spread and stuff. But to be brutally honest, you could make a whole video just about aiming and practice aiming and learn the nuances of each and every armament and belt that is out there, speak about convergence settings. So one thing I would absolutely not recommend you to do is using vertical targeting. So in case you don't know what vertical targeting actually is, simply put, it's the vertical version of convergence. So let's say you have a convergence setting of 400 meters and vertical targeting enabled. It would counteract the bullet drop on those 400 meters. So your bullet would hit the exact same spot, not only on a horizontal plane, but also on the vertical plane. Is this a problem? Yeah, if you switch back from using vertical targeting back to not using it, you might never get a good chance to learn some guns or armaments, because it would always throw off your aim. So I know there's a lot of people out there that actually use vertical targeting, and if you decide to learn the guns and stuff by using it, I mean, just go for it. But for me it didn't work out because it mostly threw off my aim, so that's something I would not recommend to do. But the other thing that actually helps out a lot is to rewatch, not necessarily the replays, but try to capture your matches. And although you do not upload them or gonna use them for some videos, but in my opinion it always turns out to be very helpful if you can just go back there and analyze all kinds of gameplay situations, but especially those where you think your aim is still not very good. So this could always help you to develop ideas how to improve your aim and to get better in the long run. So I hope I have answered your question to your satisfaction. And there's 2 more questions left. And Carl Zeng would like to know, can you show us your control settings? Most of my control settings are actually pretty standard. I'm using the WASD and Q and E keys to steer and maneuver the plane and use the rudder. I'm using the C key for mouse look. I'm using the spacebar for zooming in and zooming out. I'm using the control and shift key for dropping bombs or shooting rockets. The tab key for the scoreboard, and G key for gears, F for cycling flaps, and M for the map and stuff. So I don't think it's absolutely necessary to show you my control setup. However, where it's not the default or standard settings, I'm very happy to provide further details. For example, I've split the shooting of the small and large caliber guns. I'm using the left mouse button for shooting every calibers on my plane, whereas I'm using the right mouse button just to shoot the small caliber. And this mainly does 2 things. First of all, it conserves ammo. Second of all, most small calibers, or 50 cals compared to cannons 20 mils or 30 mils, have different velocities and also drop rates. So depending on the distance you start shooting at your target, you could, for example, hit with the 50 cals but miss with the cannons. And that's when this ammo conservation stuff comes into play, because what I usually do is I open up at longer ranges with the 50 cals, and when I get up close, I, for example, throw those 20 mils into the mix. So that's one pro tip there. In addition to that, I'm cycling through the flaps by using my middle mouse key, and I'm also using the mouse wheel to decrease or increase my throttle. And I found this very helpful in dogfights, because I do not have to lift my left hand away from the WASD keys, which would be the steering and stuff. I could use my right hand on the mouse, cycling through flaps and increasing throttle, yet still maintain aiming at my target, maintain a view on my target. So yeah, another pro tip there. And finally, you might have recognized I'm using MEC or manual engine controls. And there's also tons of how to set up manual engine controls tutorials on YouTube, so I recommend you just look those up. I could explain you my settings, but it's not mandatory to use MEC. It just helps with some planes with overheating and stuff. But as it's not mandatory, I would say just look up a guide, and if you're interested in it, just set it up, try it out. I'm hoping this answers your question. And the final question for today's video comes from Rainy Le Cinematic Guy, and he would like to know, when will you make tank videos? Short answer, probably never, but never say never. Thing is, I necessarily do not dislike tanks or dislike tank gameplay. I tried it out a few times and it was kind of fun. It was entertaining. But the reason I don't find it so interesting is simply because it kind of misses this third dimension. I think that's one of the reasons you might possibly never see me playing any tanks, or at least making videos about tanks. But yeah, never say never. I mean, I would not totally exclude it, but at this time I would say no. And that's all the questions answered. I hope to your satisfaction. So in case you have some follow-up questions, just post them down below. I'm gonna answer them in the comment section. So what is there left to say? First of all, thanks again for making it possible to reach this milestone, 100 subscribers. That's pretty awesome. And second of all, yeah, I'm gonna make more videos. So I'm having this list with sub requests. They are not forgotten, but to be honest, do not expect these videos in the next few days. I would rather say in the next few weeks, because yeah, sometimes I don't like to make videos, to be brutally honest. Sometimes, and like I mentioned before, I prefer to play something else, and yeah, so War Thunder doesn't take over too much of my time, and also I think it's very important to sometimes get the game out of your system, so to speak. Because it can be very frustrating at times. The grind can be frustrating, attending to events can be frustrating. I'm not this hardcore gamer, I'm simply not. And I still like to spend my time with other stuff, real life stuff, and not only War Thunder. I think this kind of wraps it up for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I have answered all your questions to your satisfaction. Thanks for posting these questions, asking these. It was fun to make this video and also fun to answer them. So see you next time. Bye bye.